KSQD Santa Cruz, your community radio station for the Monterey Bay at 90.7 and 89.7 FM. I am your host for Talk of the Bay this evening, Rachel Ann Goodman. It's my great pleasure to be here. We have two great halves to the program between 5 and 6 o'clock this evening, all of them focusing on the local environment. In the first half, we'll be talking with Nancy Macy. She is in the Environmental Committee of the Valley Women's Club, and they're planning a big event coming up. And in the second half of the program, we'll be listening to a marine historian talking about the abalone fishing industry here in the Monterey Bay. He is going to be the recipient of the Ed Ricketts Award given by the National Marine Sanctuary folks. Also on the show will be Lisa Utal. They'll be joining us in the second half of the program. I want to thank some folks that have given in the past recent days. Not too long from now, we had a pledge drive which supported this radio station. We'd like to thank everyone who gave so far. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're so, so grateful. And the most recent people to give, and like them, you can give anytime. We'd like to thank Betty and Johnny, Anonymous, very generous Anonymous, Harriet, Bahia Brunel, and Myers Thompson Fund, and Michael Tree. Those are people who have recently given in the past few days. Thank you so much. We are so grateful. If you would like to join them and take home your own squid shirt or hat, you can go online at ksqd.org and click the red donate button. Nancy Macy, welcome to K-Squid.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much for including me.
It is my honor to have you. You have been an environmental activist for a large portion of your life and involved with the Valley Women's Club also. You are about to celebrate the 20th year of the Environmental Town Hall. And that's coming up really soon, isn't it? In November?
Nope, Saturday.
Okay, not even November yet. It's still October then. So Saturday is the 22nd annual. And the featured speaker will be Gail Pellerin, our pretty much newly elected assemblywoman from this area. Tell us a little bit about the history of this event and why it's so important for people to attend if they do.
Well, we feel as an organization, and we've learned over the years that it's really important to be involved in good government. And the way to be involved is to know who your legislators are and to maintain contact with them and to be involved with them. And of course, as a 501c3 organization, there's no campaigning, there's no, endorsements of personal people running for office. But once they're in office, we do our best to maintain and grow relationships with them. And that makes a big difference. And it has turned out to be very, very beneficial for us. And that's because we came up with the idea of having a town hall that focused on the environment, and we wanted to bring our state assembly member in on it because at the time, this was 24 years ago, there was a whole lot of stuff going on at the state level that was just going to cause really a lot of problems with us, from water to timber harvest to all sorts of things. So we invited our then state assembly member, Fred Keeley, and said, would you come and give a little presentation on what's going on? And he said, sure. And so we decided to make it much more fun, and we reached out to every single environmental organization, the county agencies, anybody we could think of to come and set up a table and have their information there. So state parks and all these other different organizations came, and it was a huge hit. And we regularly have a sellout crowd at the Felton Community Hall. And when COVID hit, we were able to have Mark Stone, one of his several times in speaking as our assembly member, he came and did a Zoom for it. But of course, we didn't have the tabling and all. So we're back in person this Saturday. Feels real good. Yeah.
So the event starts at 1 o'clock. All are welcome. You said a sellout crowd. Do people need tickets?
No. I meant just that.
Full.
Yeah.
All right.
And we usually have a lot of people coming, but you never know what's going to happen. And so we are counting on a good turnout just because we do have our state assembly member there. We have a lot of organizations that are worth seeing and listening and learning from. Do you know that your septic tank can grow mosquitoes? Well, Nader from the Mosquito and Vector Control Division of the County of Santa Cruz will be there, and he'll tell you all about that and how to prevent it.
I don't even want to think what happens if they come up the pipe when you're sitting there, but we'll get on. Right. We'll get to that in a moment. I did not know that myself.
I know that kind of information will be there, but obviously quite a variety of things because they're different agencies and different organizations.
So you were founded in a time when, the environment, there were a lot of threats to the environment. There still are. The San Lorenzo Valley is, in case people haven't been there or just listening in Monterey, perhaps they haven't been up to Henry Cowell or Big Basin recently. It's a pretty large area with a population of people living there and also large swaths of redwood forest and mixed tree forest. Can you tell us a little bit more just as a snapshot as an ecosystem or a bioregion? How would you describe this area that you're stewarding or trying to keep intact in some sort of natural form?
Right. The San Lorenzo Valley is made up of the mountainous areas of the Santa Cruz Coastal Mountains that feed into the San Lorenzo River. So there are a bunch of small watersheds, like along a creek, Bear Creek, Boulder Creek, all the different creeks that go through the valley, and then they feed into the San Lorenzo River. And as you go down the river, the main highway, which is Highway 9, it's a state highway, goes along, and that's where the main communities are located. So we have at the bottom, we have Felton, and as you go up there, you go through Ben Lomond, and then there's Little Brookdale, and then you get to Boulder Creek. And it seems like it's real easy to get from Boulder Creek down to Santa Cruz, but it's really hard to get from Santa Cruz back up to Boulder Creek. There's some mental block about coming back up there, but we do have beautiful, beautiful redwoods in spite of the extraordinarily disastrous fire in 2020 that took out Big Basin Redwood State Park. It's coming back. The trees are coming back. Of course, we'll never have the same big old buildings that were built, in 19 whatever. And but the mother and the father of the forest are still alive and well, and they are recovering. And they were badly burned. And the chimney tree, which had been through many a fire before, you could stand inside and look up, and it was living and beautiful, but you look inside and the whole thing's hollow all the way up. Well, it's gone now. I mean, it's there, but it's
in pieces on the ground. I saw that. I went hiking through what used to be the Loop Trail. I worked there right after college, and I lived in one of the little cabins, and we did an interview not long ago with someone from State Parks.
That's wonderful. Get a sense of that.
Yeah, the history. And there's two state parks there. There's
Henry
Cowell and Big Basin. And Henry Cowell didn't burn at all.
That's correct.
But the other one did, and it's coming back.
One other thing to tell you about the valley that's really important is that the mountains are steep, highly erosive hills and mountains. And they are a challenge to live on responsibly, because everything you put into the ground or on the land is going to wash downstream, and it's going to affect something downstream, or it'll get in the water and affect whatever's in the water. So people need to learn how to live up there, and it's a little bit different than living in the city, where when you flush your toilet, the water goes into a sewer and the water's treated, and that whole system happens. Well, nope, it goes into a septic tank, which is in your yard.
I remember in the floods of 81, 82 here that septic tanks were floating down the San Lorenzo River. It was a disturbing sight.
Very disturbing.
Yeah, and whatever else was in them was also going down the river into the ocean. We're all connected. Anyone who lives at the beach is connected to the San Lorenzo Valley. Anyone who recreates here in Santa Cruz from elsewhere is connected to the San Lorenzo Valley, simply because the river brings down whatever was up there onto the beach and deposits it, whether it's driftwood or pollution or a number of other silting, mud and things like that in big storms it's very clear that it's washing into the bay when surfers can't go out because of the high E.
Right.
coli levels.
Right.
So that's a big area to be stewarding, to be taking care of.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people live up there? What's the population of all those?
It's somewhere around 15,000, I believe. I'm not sure about the most recent numbers, but it's in that area.
And most live in the valley,
Or
right?
maybe
There's some
those
on
are-
the hillsides.
That might be the number of mailing addresses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's more
Yeah.
than that.
So most people live down in the lowlands, not necessarily on the steep sides of hills, but there are some of those very narrow snaking roads like up Zayante or Lampico.
Yeah. Real adventure to live up there.
Yeah. Trees fall in your house regularly, things like that. And we remember Love Creek. So all of these realities of just in an ecosystem that is steep and has a river running through it, but also has all these people, it's kind of built in that there'll be a host of interesting challenges. And I want to go through some of them and talk about how you're dealing
Sure.
with them as the Valley Women's Club, Environmental Committee of the Valley Women's Club. If you just joined us, I'm speaking with Nancy Macy, who is head of that committee, and having a big town hall Saturday at 1 o'clock, all the way till 3. One of them is PG&E. This is a big private utility that we're all dependent on for our lights and other things that power our lives. During the fire, when that was not happening, it was very obvious how dependent we were. Most people have wells that depend on electricity to have water. So there's been a lot of tension between environmentalists and PG&E over the years. And one of them after the fire was over logging, just taking everything out. What kind of laws were in place that maybe were waived after the fire that you saw happening with logging? Because I know that you've been involved with the logging issue a long time.
Sure. Well, commercial logging, they actually allow if you have a current harvest that you're doing or just finished, and there's a fire, you can go in and finish clearing the trees. So a lot of redwood trees were taken out, especially north of Boulder Creek, because they had been doing a selective logging that, you get to do every 10, 12, 15 years, whatever it is. And but after the fire, because the trees are damaged and they may be alive and keep growing and they'll be happy trees and make a happy forest, they don't make any more saleable, marketable lumber. So they are allowed to cut down the rest of the trees and then, wait for things to grow back before they could harvest again. And that's has a big impact. When you mention PG&E, however, PG&E is supposed to abide by the forest practice rules when they are doing their tree cutting down along their rights of way, and they are supposed to get this permit is called a utility exemption permit, which means they don't have to put in a separate plan for each property that they're working on, which would be ludicrous. How many properties there all are along Bear Creek Road or something, and they're trying to do trimming there. But they need to get these permits if they're going to cut down trees. And after the fire, they stopped getting the permits. They stopped applying for the permits. They did not require their contractors who were doing the cutting to have any kind of permit. And this was against CAL FIRE regulations. And the tragedy of what PG&E did was, instead of just clearing the areas where they had to put the poles back up and putting the poles back up and putting the wires back up, they went onto private property when the people were not home. They hadn't even been allowed back in yet. And PG&E went in and cut down big old growth oak trees. Didn't matter what kind of tree it was, they got cut down.
Were they making money off this logging? Is that what the motivation?
They're not allowed to, technically, but there were huge stockpiles of logs. And then when they got kind of caught, maybe not quite living up to that, they started chopping the trees up and leaving them for the property owners to deal with. So if a property owner, if they cut down a redwood tree and the property owner wanted to use that redwood tree to rebuild their house and get the lumber from it, they couldn't do it because it had been chopped up into 8-foot lengths, that kind of thing. It was just, the total thing was an enormous travesty.
And the people who had to endure that, they had already gone through such loss that having their trees cut down on top of it.
Right, it was horrible. It was really horrible.
Insult to injury. So has that been resolved, or are they still?
Well, CAL FIRE, our local Felton CAL FIRE filed notices of violation with the state, with the the folks up at the state level of CAL FIRE, and those notices of violation, there were over 24, I think it was 26, I can't remember the number exactly, but it was, most of them were in Santa Cruz County, a few were in San Mateo County, because our CAL FIRE covers both counties. And it turned out that along with CAL FIRE notices of violation, the Coastal Commission filed a notice of violation because PG&E contractors had been cutting down trees without proper notification and approval of the Coastal Commission on the part of Bonnie Doon that's in the coast. So then the city of Santa Cruz was very upset because PG&E was driving through the creek beds and all the restoration that they'd been doing to try to save the fish and make sure they had clean water coming down. And PG&E just ignored all those regulations. Their contractors they had so many different infractions of the rules that the penalties could have been, and we haven't heard yet the final thing, $10,000 per day per violation. And it would have been in the tens of 30s, 50s of millions of dollars if they were held accountable, if PG&E were held accountable.
And they weren't.
And they haven't been.
Yet.
And they could have been the Attorney General, State Attorney General, could take them to court and sue them and on criminal grounds, take them to court on criminal grounds. So either or both of those would make me delighted. But at this point, the notices of violation have kind of disappeared in the system. And we did one of those public record requests. And that was back in May because it had been a year since the final report had been turned in. And nothing had happened on them. And guess how many times we've been told, oh, we're still looking to see where they are, the reports and the information. I asked for all the emails. We wanted to see all the letters written back and forth to find out where the heck those notices of violation disappeared to. And, of course, we haven't found that out yet. But we're on our 10th refusal of, oh, well, don't worry, we're still looking, but we have to make sure it's okay for us to share these because we don't have to share everything if it's private. And I'm going, what's private when it comes to cutting down trees?
Wow, you want Nancy Macy on your side if you're a homeowner and you had trees illegally cut on your property. She's a bulldog.
Tried.
She's fighting for people who don't have the fortitude to keep challenging these.
We've got an incredible group of people working on that.
Valley Women's Club rocks. So you guys do a lot of environmental stuff. You talked about water as being a really big issue up there in the San Lorenzo Valley, and water meaning drinking water, safe, clean water, which a lot of us take for granted. Tell us a little bit about the fight over the Boulder Creek Big Basin water system and what that's all about.
Yeah, well, primarily the San Lorenzo Valley Water District, which is you elect the board members. It's a publicly governed water district and doesn't make a profit or anything. They just have to cover their expenses. And and the fire gave them a whole bunch of problems. They're doing a remarkably good job in spite of the fire. And but the Big Basin Water Company, which is a for-profit company owned by a family and serves about 550 homes, give or take, was badly damaged in the fire, and they lost their records. And of course, in a modern day and age, you would think they would have those files in the cloud, but they claimed that they didn't even have the addresses and names of all of their people. And I'm going, well, how do they bill anybody?
Yeah.
But the real problems were they couldn't provide enough water for the people who were living there even before the fire. They had a 2-inch water main that was going up Big Basin, which is Highway 236, and it's a main road, and it has a lot of housing and little roads off of it with houses up little roads. And that water main didn't provide enough water for the people that were already there. And so there were a lot of problems before. People loved them because if the water went out, they would come in the middle of the night and try and help, and they were really nice. But no, and they didn't charge very much for their water. Well, guess what? They charged enough. They had plenty of money to live on and take vacations on and things like that. As far as we know, they were fine, but the system was in bad repair. So when the fire came and destroyed even more of it, it's at a real crisis state. And people are losing the water, and without warning, of course. And then all of a sudden you don't have any water. And then the water comes back on. Oh, thank goodness the water's back on. And you take your water and you have a drink and you take a shower. And then you get 2 days later, you get the boil only notice.
Yipes.
So there's been no adequate communication. And because they're a for-profit organization, it's really a problem because they can't go after the same type of funding that a nonprofit or public agency can go after. So the funding is not going to be as easy to make the fixes. So it's a quandary.
Wow. And maybe the infrastructure bill will bail them out, but who knows?
Well, they're going into receivership. They've been taken over by the courts.
Oh, wow.
So they've lost their ability to control it anymore.
That's a big deal for
It's
those
a big
homeowners. Deal. That, and I'm really curious, and I wish I was going to be in town to ask Gail Pellerin this. What's happening with the insurance debacle of people with rural homes?
She's having a insurance webinar.
Oh, good.
And I can't tell you the date because I don't have my computer in front of me.
Okay.
But
we'll announce it when we get it.
Yeah, you should hear about that. It's coming pretty soon in early November.
It's not quite in the environmental realm that we're talking about, but still it affects homeowners.
Every one of us care about that.
Yeah, indeed. A couple more topics. The San Lorenzo River runs through there. We were talking about, everything flows downhill. What kinds of work are you doing around water conservation and clean water, just in terms of keeping the river alive and
For
healthy?
the past 37 years, even during COVID, we held the river and road cleanup. And, we attract all ages. Kids come with their parents. School kids come. And us old folks come. And people go out and they try to clean up either from along the river or in the river if they can safely, or the roads leading to the river or the creeks, because if there's trash and debris and detritus there that's dirty and shouldn't be in the water, it'll wash in there as soon as we have some rain. So, which we've learned, everyone downstream learns. So that's one of the things that we've done. We've been very active in septic issues. We have a septic tank brochure so that people who, especially when they first move in, they can learn how to use it. So, it goes on.
Well, it's great work you're doing, and I just want to commend you for sticking it out so many years. You also have been, until recently, very deeply involved with the Redwood Mountain Fair, which funds a lot of nonprofits in the valley.
Yeah.
And that's a huge effort. That's put on by volunteers. I mean, we put on a radio station, you put on a festival, and we get spread out throughout the year with all the work, but your organization puts in a huge amount of work,
Yeah.
leading up to the festival and then during that festival.
Right. The steering committee is actually an independent group. They aren't governed or run or sponsored by the Valley Women's Club anymore.
Oh, okay.
And they are independent. They are not a nonprofit or anything yet, so we still are their nonprofit umbrella. But they found that it really worked to have a tight-knit team that could focus and get the work done, and it's working really, really well. And
it was a success this year, wasn't it?
yeah, big success this year, and especially on the heels of getting over COVID and people being scared to come and then coming, and
the weather cooperated.
Was great. Yeah,
it has rained in the past, but it didn't this
as I
time.
recall, you were MC for the year it rained. So,
but it all worked out because Peter Rowan did an amazing set in the Bret Hart building, and it was fantastic.
That was great.
Well, Nancy, I wish you the best of luck. Let's give out the information one more time about Saturday's event. You're having Gail Pellerin, the Assembly member for a good portion of the northern part of Santa Cruz County, answering your questions and giving a government update. There will be, looks like, over a dozen or more local environmental groups having tables there, and the public is invited to enjoy exhibits, refreshments, and ideas. And if they want to reach you or get more info, how would they do that?
They can call me, area code 831-345-1555. That's 831-345-1555. Or you can go to the valleywomen'sclub.org website, all one word, Valley Women's Club, Women's Club.
Nice.
And, over half our members are men, so
don't let that scare you away.
Don't let the name scare you away. That just makes everybody feel good, because we started out as a group of women who wanted to make a difference.
Well, you have. And I just want to congratulate you for keeping on, which is something to be said for that, too.
It gets renewed on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being there and for doing what you do.
It's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for having me here today.
Thanks for being here. Nancy Macy, Valley Women's Club, Environmental